For centuries, sailors approaching Alexandria would look up to see a marvel of ancient engineering rising above the horizon. This was nothing else than the Great Lighthouse, a shining beacon more than 100 meters tall, one of the tallest buildings of its time. Also known simply as the Pharos, named after the small island it was situated on, it is most likely the most famous lighthouse in the history of humanity. Built during the reign of Ptolemaic II Philadelphus in the 3rd century BC, near the harbour of Alexandria, the tower served as a guide for ships approaching the city. Ancient writers describe it as visible from enormous distances out at sea, leading sailors safely into one of the busiest ports of the Mediterranean. But what features could Civilization VI attribute to this wonder, and what can we learn from them? In Civilization VI, the Great Lighthouse provides the following bonuses: +1 movement for all naval units, +3 gold, and +1 Great Admiral point per turn. You may notice that the Great Lighthouse's bonuses are very similar to that of the Colossus. I don't think that's a coincidence, and the explanation becomes more obvious when we compare the respective cities where the wonders were built. So let's take a brief look at the history of ancient Alexandria. The city was founded in 331 BC by Alexander the Great, who has a habit of appearing in these wonder explanations. Named after himself, of course, his aim was to create a center of Hellenism in Egypt's coast. While Alexander would never return to the city again, his wish very much came true under the leadership of the Ptolemaic dynasty, which inherited part of Alexander's conquests after his death. Ptolemy I Soter declared himself pharaoh of that kingdom and announced Alexandria to be its capital. The city developed incredibly fast. In the span of just one generation, it had already become the most populated city in the world, a title that it would keep until Rome surpassed it. The early Ptolemies wanted Alexandria to be the scientific and cultural hub of the world, and funded the construction and maintenance of the Great Library of Alexandria, which I have already went over. An equally important aspect of the ancient city was that it was one of, if not the largest, economic hubs of the Mediterranean Sea, and this is where the Great Lighthouse comes into play. See, until the founding of Alexandria, Tyre was the largest trade port of the area. Well, Alexander the Great famously conquered and looted the city, so some other place had to take its place as the center of commerce between Europe and Asia, and Alexandria was perfectly situated for the role. One of Ptolemy I's actions as pharaoh was to commission a lighthouse, since what would such an important port be without one? The construction cost 800 talents, which in today's money would be a lot, and it finished after 12 years, under Ptolemy II Philadelphus. The tower's architect or main sponsor was probably Sostratus, and the height of the finished wonder was measured at around 100 meters, from later Arab sources, something that would place it comfortably among the tallest buildings of antiquity. Strabo, who has also become a recurring character, notes that the lighthouse was very needed, since it wasn't very easy to navigate to Alexandria by travelling along the shore. This meant that sailors had to be able to spot the port of Alexandria from a long distance, in order to sail smoothly to it. It's no question that the Great Lighthouse went above and beyond when it comes to that purpose. And many sailors from all around the Mediterranean would indeed be guided by the lighthouse's beacon, as Alexandria quickly developed to be one of the most important economic centers of the world at that time. From a preserved papyrus, we know that Ptolemy II had issued a decree that all foreign merchants were required to exchange their gold and silver for new Ptolemaic silver coins in order to make their purchases in Alexandria and the rest of the country. In the same document, the one in charge of Alexandria's mint notes that the sheer amount of foreign coins that entered the city was far too much for the mint to be able to keep up with these exchanges. From this complaint, it's obvious that the amount of trade that passed through Alexandria was immense. It was basically the bridge that connected Europe to Arabia and India, and the amount of wealth that came from trade reflected that. I think that just like the Colossus, the gold bonus of the Great Lighthouse of Alexandria reflects the prosperous economic and trade hub that the city grew to be while the wonder overlooked its port. The Great Admiral bonus again mirrors the Colossus and can be explained in a similar manner. One of the great ambitions of Ptolemy II was for his kingdom to be the major naval power of the Eastern Mediterranean. His father had suffered a crushing defeat at Salamina from the fleet of Antigonus, so this was also personal, and Ptolemy II made sure to create the largest naval fleet of the Hellenistic world. Archaeologist and professor Lionel Casson referred to that period as the greatest naval arms race in ancient history. Many of these ships would sail in and out of the port of Alexandria under the watchful eye of the Great Lighthouse, and we can assume that the bonus to Great Admiral generation is tied to that increased naval activity. This leaves the final bonus, the one granting +1 movement to all naval units. Well, it may be a bit of a reach on my part, but I think this could refer to the naval reach of the Ptolemaic Empire. The kingdom in its early stages was not that much of an empire, but rather a collection of strategic coastal settlements all around the eastern Mediterranean, which were protected by the powerful Ptolemaic fleet. This required the fleet to be not only large but efficient, able to sail from port to port fast. The bonus could also be seen as a more general improvement on the city's maritime infrastructure. As mentioned before, it wasn't the easiest thing to navigate to Alexandria, so the Great Lighthouse was built in order to guide the ships to its shores through the shallow waters. In that way, we can argue that the lighthouse made sailing to Alexandria a much more efficient endeavor, thus justifying the bonus movement. The Wonder requires the celestial navigation technology. Ancient sailors at the time of Ptolemaic Egypt relied heavily on the stars for orientation at sea. A structure like the Great Lighthouse makes sense as an extension of this growing understanding of navigation and maritime travel. The technology basically represents civilizations becoming increasingly capable of navigating open waters with consistency. The tech doesn't fit perfectly with the Wonder perhaps, but at least it's semantically related to maritime activities, so we can let it slide. The Wonder must be built on coast adjacent to land and a harbour with a lighthouse. A very direct and logical requirement. The real lighthouse of Alexandria stood directly beside one of the most important harbours of the ancient world, and its entire purpose was to aid maritime traffic. Now, why would you need a tiny normal lighthouse to build a version 5 or 6 times larger? I'm not sure, and this is the third time I've been over this, so I'll just leave it at that, while showing the effects of the Great Lighthouse in Civilization V.
This lighthouse was the cynosure of all eyes.
The in-game quote is the smallest one so far, and comes from Henry David Thoreau, the American philosopher and writer best known for Walden. The word cynosure originally referred to the constellation Ursa Minor, which contains the North Star and was used for navigation. Over time, the word came to mean something that attracts great attention or serves as a guiding point. The word is also included in the book The Words You Should Know to Sound Smart. I couldn't figure out where exactly Thoreau used that quote, and to be honest, I think the quote was used exclusively because cynosure is a very strange and cool word. But yes, it fits nicely with the Great Lighthouse in any case. Like several other ancient wonders, the lighthouse sadly did not survive into the modern era. A series of earthquakes between the 10th and 14th centuries gradually damaged and eventually destroyed the structure. Some of its remains were later reused in the construction of the citadel of Qaitbay, which still stands on the same site today. Even so, the influence of the Pharos lasted long after the tower itself disappeared. In fact, the very word Pharos eventually became synonymous with the word lighthouse in several languages. The Great Lighthouse is very similar to the Colossus in-game. However, I think the features are more fitting for the lighthouse than the bronze giant. Every bonus points towards the same central idea: maritime infrastructure, naval power, and commercial dominance. None of them feel too arbitrary, as they can be seen both as a representation of Alexandria during the Ptolemaic kingdom, as well as practical effects that would be derived from the existence of the lighthouse. It is a simple design, but sometimes that works best.